Producer Joe here from the Working Fans Podcast. And at the Working Fans Podcast, this is just a podcast that three lifelong fans created to have a place to talk comedy and pro wrestling. Now, our comedy podcast releases every Tuesday, while our wrestling podcast releases every Thursday. We release bonus episodes under the moniker Working Fans Presents every now and then. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, any major podcast provider. The important thing is just please like, rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to us. Now, we have started a new thing. We are now on Amazon and Audible. So those episodes release every Monday. And that's kind of going through the archives and just releasing our old episodes into new areas. So if you want to live through the process with us again, take that journey with us again, you can find us over on Amazon and Audible. Now, if you can't get enough of us in the audio form, check out our YouTube. It's youtube.com/C/Working Fans Wrestling Pod, or just search Working Fans Podcast on YouTube. We have the whole archive is up there. And if you listen to the Working Fans Podcast, you are more than familiar with the 531. That is our signature segment where we take your top 5 list on a particular subject, vote it down to a top 3, and then debate it down to a top 1. Now, guys, if you want to hear 3 guys talk shit about comedy, wrestling, life, anything, you will enjoy the Working Fans Podcast.
All right, everybody, it's the Combatcast with the man called Dave and Chevy. And today we got a little mini 531 Chevy because I pulled this out last second. We're going to do top UFC pay-per-views of all time. Well, our favorite pay-per-views. So so probably a lot of them is going to be personal. You had to kind of throw this up today. How was it? Did you struggle or how did this go?
I struggled remembering when fights happened and on what cards and stuff. So I had to do a little bit of research to see what was on what number cards, but the fights I remember.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of looking at. Now I got 2 lists besides ours, so I'm just gonna hit them up. All right, we got the man called Cran. All right, he's got UFC 144, his first fight card. UFC 166. Gilbert Melendez and Sanchez fight. Okay. Absolute war between them. JDS and Kane. Flyweight KO. Flyweight KO. Heavyweight KO. Cormier won. Okay, so he's just throwing some random stuff here. But that was UFC 166. I'm going to check that out. UFC 173. Dillashaw gets the belt. Also, Cormier and Lawler won. Yay. UFC 187. Crazy fight with Cormier versus Rumble. Cerrone head kick knockout. Crazy fight with Brown and Avaloski. I remember that one. And UFC 189. Jeremy Stevens. Dennis Bermudez. The Red King fight. And the crazy ended around knockout by McGregor. So I'm talking to you before. I know 189 is going to be on both our list. Do any other of these make your list here?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we'll just move right on to Randy then. Randy's got UFC. He just gave me the names. So we got UFC 49, UFC 100, 189, UFC 205, and UFC 116. Randy going to go back further than all of us, I think, with UFC 49. I'm kind of curious. I know that 100 card, that would have to be Lesnar and Mir, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then GSP was on that card, I'm sure, too. UFC 49. Okay, Randy Couture, Vitor Belfort, Joe Riggs versus Joe Dorkison.
Joe Riggs.
Chuck Liddell versus Vernon White. Oh man, so yeah, that's going back a little ways. So, all right. So
who was on 205? 205 was a big card, I think, too.
Yeah, let's take a look at that real quick too. I didn't have 205. Ooh, okay. Oh, this is a good one. Our boy Conor Asada was at this card. All right. Conor McGregor, Eddie Alvarez becomes a 2-weight class champion.
That's right.
Woodley versus Thompson. This is the one. It's a majority decision for Woodley. Or is that a majority draw?
I think that was the draw.
Yeah, it's a draw. Yep. And then Jacek and Carolina was also on that card. And then Romero with the flying knee to Chris Weidman.
Poor Weidman.
And then
Misha
Tate
split him open real bad.
Yeah.
He was bleeding real bad. And he was winning that fight, I think, too.
Yeah. That's also the one where he was telling Bisping at the end, "I love you." And Bisping was pointing needles at his ass. Oh.
Yeah. Yes.
Raquel Pennington retired Misha Tate at the time of this card until recently. And then Frankie Edgar and Jeremy Stevens, which I think Edgar had to come back. I think Edgar was winning this fight, but he got caught at one point, had to survive a round. And Habib Nurmagomedov versus Michael Johnson. I remember this one because Habib got clipped a little bit, and everybody made a big deal.
Early.
Yeah, he beat that crap. I remember him just beating up Johnson and just saying, "What are you doing? You know I deserve this." Just
he's talking to Dana through the cage.
Yeah,
he's like, "I'm gonna do this to your boy."
Yeah, your son.
Talking about Conor.
Oh my God, some names I haven't heard in a while. Tim Boach on that card.
Oh, Tim Boach, yeah.
Yeah, Jim Miller.
He's probably fighting bare knuckle somewhere or something now.
Surprised he's not. So that was a good card. Thank you for sharing that. 205, was that on Cran's list? I don't think it was. But no, he didn't have 205. I mean, that's a good one. I wish I had that. All right. So before I go to you, I've got my cards here. I got UFC 189. Not really going to look at my notes. Well, I'll look at some of my notes for this one. That was my honeymoon. So that was a big card for me. That was also, Conor versus Chad Mendes. He's supposed to be fighting Aldo, but Aldo pulled out with an injury. But oh my God, with the fucking walkouts.
The walkouts, yeah. I was just gonna say that. So good. Sinead
Connor's coming out with Sinead O'Connor.
Foggy Goose song.
Yeah. Mendes had that Country Boy Will Survive thing, but it was good though, because it was just great that they had these two opposite walkouts. And man, obviously Robbie Lawler, Rory McDonald was one of the greatest fights of all time. We've talked about that. But as Cran mentioned, Jeremy Stevens and Dennis Bermudez doesn't get some love on that. Stevens comes back with a flying knee to win that fight. Gunnar Nelson, rear naked choke on Brandon Thatch. Thomas Almeida, also a flying knee with on Brad Pickett. Matt Brown. Okay, so here's a funny story. Matt Brown guillotines chokes Tim Means. What's funny about that is I was in the back area meeting people, and I was talking to CM Punk at the time, and CM Punk leaned over to me because I think he was doing something else, and we had talked a little bit, got separated, and then he leaned over and goes, "Hey, what happened there? Who won that? I was interested in that fight." And I was like, Matt Brown finished him with some elbows, and he's like, that's what I was hoping for. Love Matt Brown. And I thought to myself, you know what? Whether he wins or loses, CM Punk is a hardcore MMA fan. So, because that's exactly the right thing. Cody No Love was on this card early, went to a decision against a guy named Henry Biones. And I remember this because he promised us the knockout. And he said one time he didn't knock anybody out on the way up. And I'm like, you let us down, Cody. But let's see. I also got on my here. I got UFC 165. All right. Now, not even looking at the rest of this card. The reason why I had this on was John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson. It was the first card. And I remember thinking to myself, I just had this feeling Gus was an interesting fight for him. And people were laughing at this, saying like, what's the big hype about this fight? Gus is tall. like, what are we doing? We're trying to find ways to make it interesting because we know Jones just dominates. Well, Gus was more than tall in this fight. He brought it. A lot of people thought he won this fight. It was a close fight, and it was a fight here, and the crowd was electric. I want to say this was in Canada. Yep, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And, some other fights in this card, too. Henan Barao spinning back kick on Eddie Weiland. Henan Barao would have been the bantamweight champion at that time, I believe. Yeah. And then, hey, get this heavyweight fight. Brendan Schaub submits Matt Mitrione with a Darce choke.
That's buddies.
Yeah, now they're buddies. Yeah. Early on the card, too, Habib Nurmagomedov defeats Pat Healy by decision. Also earlier in the card, Steve Wonderboy Thompson with KO over Chris Clements. And that'll be it for notable fights on this card. But UFC 165 for that reason. I got UFC 141. Cran had 144. I had 141 because that was the first major pay-per-view I watched. I watched it at Buffalo Wild Wings. It was Brock Lesnar versus Alistair Overeem. Brock's coming back for the first time since the Kane loss after being sick with diverticulitis. And Overeem is coming in his first fight in the UFC after all the hype of winning championships everywhere. And, quick fight. Overeem kicks him in the kidney, and we're done. But, man, the atmosphere in that Wild Wings for the Lesnar walkout and everything that was about to happen was just electric. People were buzzing. I remember Gina Carano was in the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And just good stuff. Nate Diaz beat Donald Cerrone earlier on the card. Johnny Hendricks beat John Fitch. Gustafson was on that card. Good stuff. UFC 141. All right, so we're going to add one more to that list. I got UFC 236. All right, I'm going to add a couple more, I'm going to say. And it's going to be Holloway and Poirier 2 was on that. One of the greatest fights of all time. And one of the other greatest fights of all time was on that card as well, Stylebender and Kelvin Gastelum.
That's right.
So there's two just tremendous fights on that card, and they really make that card. And Nikita Krylov was on this card. He had a rear naked choke over OSP. There's some good stuff on there. Rahil Muhammad defeated Curtis Millender. But, yeah, those top two fights we're talking about, I believe this pay-per-view is going to make your card, so I'll let you talk a little bit about it. But I added two more, actually. All right, so 178 is on my list here. I don't know if this one's going to make yours, but this is Demetrius Johnson versus Chris Caruso. All right, this is Kimura. He gets here in round 2. But Donald Cerrone takes on Eddie Alvarez. All right, Alvarez was debuting in time. Conor McGregor, who's on his way up, knocks out Dustin Poirier. All right. And then we had Yoel Romero defeating Tim Kennedy. This is a fight where Romero stayed on the stool too long.
Yes.
Right. Look at this card. Right below that, Kat Zagano defeats Amanda Nunes. This is the one where she came back to TKO Amanda Nunes. She has that scream, too, that primal scream when she wins the fight at the end.
She got brain damage from that fight.
Oh, she did? Yeah.
So she won, but she lost.
Yeah, her career is never the same after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and get back to that Romero fight, too. That's the one where we asked Romero, why did you stay on the stool? And he just responded, I'm sorry. One of the great lines in MMA. Dominic Cruz had returned after several years off on this one and defeated Takeya Mizugaki with TKO punches. Jorge Masvidal defeated James Krause on this card. Wonderboy Thompson was also on this card, defeated Patrick Cody. A young Kevin Lee was on this card. So 178 is a sleeper of a card. I also had to have on here, this was just a big Wild Wings moment. We used to go here all the time. UFC 173, TJ Dillashaw dismantling, upsetting Renan Barao and winning the bantamweight title. This was TJ was kind of our boy. We kind of followed him on The Ultimate Fighter and stuff. And I remember a couple people just showing up that night. We were all watching this, and it was just electric. The performance he put on. Cormier was on there too. He did a rear naked choke on Dan Henderson after he slammed him. Robbie Lawler stopped Jake Ellenberger on here. James Krause defeated Jamie Varner. Mike Chiesa defeated Francisco Trinidad. Tony Ferguson was on this card. So some good undercard talent on this card. We're going to hear a lot more about in the future. But UFC 173 rounded up my list. So
it's a good list.
So what do you got for me, buddy?
We're gonna have a couple of the same cards on there. So I got UFC 217. That's GSP's return after his first retirement or whatever.
Yeah,
he returned to middleweight to fight Michael Bisping for the middleweight belt and defeated him rear naked choke. That also had TJ versus Cody, the first fight on there, and TJ knocked Cody out, and they had all that heat. That was a great fight. And Rose Namajunas defeats Joanna, who we thought was unbeatable at the time.
Yeah.
We thought possibly she might beat her, catch her with some sort of submission or whatever, but she came out and made her tap to strikes, which was, amazing.
Hence, Cormier invented Thug Rose. Thug Rose.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So I remember being super hyped for that one. And next one is UFC 202. So Conor, I think, was supposed to be on that UFC 200 card, and that card was cursed. Obviously, they had a bunch of issues, but he ended up on the 202 card versus Nate for their second fight. So that was a great fight. One of the best ever. And
Conor, one of Conor's best performances too, because he went the whole 5 rounds, and
he looked tired. He was running at some points, but he knocked Nate down a bunch of times.
I know we're not. We've kind of jumped off the Conor bandwagon here a little bit. We used to be, but that time, I have to say, to give Conor his due, that might be his best performance. I know some people didn't think he won, but I mean, when you think about going the full 5 rounds, knocking Nate down and hanging in there, coming back, taking some punches like that. That's arguably his best performance in terms of just showing heart, at least.
Yeah. That one also had Rumble, and Anthony Rumble Johnson knocked out our fan favorite Glover.
I had a feeling you said it.
Uppercuts in 13 seconds or something. And then Cowboy defeated Rick Story. I don't know if you remember this, but it's a highlight reel combination where he hits him with 2 punches, a leg kick, and then kicks him in the face or something.
Yeah.
That was a great combo. I just remember that card. Next card is UFC 229. So that was Conor and Habib. Obviously, all the build-up and everything. The fight, could be wobbled Conor. And obviously, I think it was the 4th round, Conor missed submission. All the jump in the cage afterwards and all that I can deal without, but it was an exciting card. It had Tony Ferguson versus Sergio Pettis on there, which was a great fight before Pettis broke his hand. And it also had Derek the Black Beast beating Volkov, who, Volkov was beating him the whole fight, and Derek did what Derek does and landed a fight with a punch with 11 seconds left and knocked him out.
This is the infamous "my balls was hot."
My balls was hot. That's right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Nice. And then we had UFC 236, which we both had. The Max and Dustin 2.
Yeah.
Obviously that was Max's coming up to lightweight for the first and only time so far. And I read recently that Dustin said Max was his toughest opponent because he was so game. I don't know about that because he lost to Khabib, so I'd say maybe he might have some tougher opponents. But obviously the Kelvin.
That might have been I could be wrong. I thought it was the toughest opponent he ever beat.
That might be. That might have been what it was. Okay. That makes more sense. Yeah.
Right.
And obviously the Kelvin Gastelum versus Stylebender, which might be the best middleweight fight of all time. And my number 1 is UFC 189. The Conor versus Mendez for the same reasons. The walkout. I mean, it wasn't my honeymoon, but the walkout.
It's still on your bird.
Yeah, still
all
there.
Good. All good.
My favorite fight of all time is that Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald fight,
Awesome
where
fight.
just how busted up they got, and both guys were hurt, and the staring each other down and spraying blood in the octagon, and that's probably my number one card. I just want to throw out there as an honorable mention UFC 1. Okay, just because it's iconic. It Hoist Gracie do what he did. In a UFC that had almost no rules and no weight classes. So we wouldn't be where we are here without UFC 1. So
it's funny you mentioned that, and UFC 100 was on somebody's list, but nobody had UFC 200 on the list.
That stupid gold canvas would have ruled it out. Just that for me, but that was the one where Jones popped for something right before the fight, so DC had to fight Anderson Silva and was being real nice to him and just kind of held him down.
Yeah,
and then I think there was another fight on there too, where there was a issue and it got canceled or postponed or something.
Yeah, there were a couple. That was not a well-received card. So I think UFC 189 has to make our final three. I would say along with UFC 236, just for those two awesome fights. And then I'm going to say, even though I don't know how much love I got, but the one you mentioned there should have been on there, was the Garden card there. GSP's return with Bisping.
Yeah, first card at the Garden also, I think, right?
Well, was the Conor...
Was that maybe that was the earlier Conor?
I think that was the Conor one was before that, I think, yeah. So, but nonetheless, you could argue that one should be on there too. I mean, it's kind of funny we don't have the Conor card out here, and we're not Conor. This isn't because we hate Conor right now, but it's really that. I don't know. I just really like these cards. I just think, I'll say honorable mention to the Conor Alvarez card in New York, because that was also a really good card.
Yeah. And
you could argue that'd be in there. But I'm gonna stick with these three. Fight quality counts for something here too, for our enjoyment. And I think 236 just had that in abundance. I think 189 had an abundance, and I think and that was 217, the GSP one? Yeah. So I think that had a great buzz and the exciting finishes about it. And for that reason, I'm having a hard time figuring out who to bounce first. I think I'm going to bounce 236, because even though it was an awesome card, I don't think it had the buzz quite of the other two cards.
It wasn't a top to bottom,
right. It was those two fights that really made that evening at the end. But yeah, so 189 did have the Conor factor actually, because again we're at the height of that, So and that awesome fight with Rory. That card was so good from beginning to end. But then that GSP Bisping, Rose and Jacek and UFC 189 was my honeymoon. I'm going to take the biases out. I kind of think I'm going to lean towards 217 here.
I was thinking the same thing. I feel like I'm biased towards 189 because I love Rory and that Robbie fight so much. But I think you're right. From top to bottom with the finishes and the excitement, 217's probably got to get it.
And there's some upsets too. You could argue all three of those fights were upset wins at the time. Because Cody was so hot, we thought he was going to knock out TJ, and he does rock him in the beginning. And then TJ comes back. Rose was a huge upset, and even GSP to a certain level, just because Bisping was bigger and GSP hadn't fought in a while.
That's right.
So, so for the upset factors. Now, all right, so that's it. 217 is going to be our number one. Couple other notes before we get out of here I want to talk about today. Woodley versus Paul is this weekend. We've talked a little bit about this. I believe there's a tattoo on the line here, right? If Woodley loses, yes, is that a thing? I love Jake Paul on here.
Yeah, I think so. Gentleman's agreement, I believe.
Yeah, that's how that goes. Jake Paul is actually the slight favorite. I think it's slight, but he's favorite. I have a hard time believing he's a monster favorite, because I just feel like, he's still kind of unknown. He's beaten guys that aren't really boxers, and Woodley's not really a boxer. But I'm not totally sold that Jake Paul is really a boxer still. You can't tell me you're a boxer when you're just beating other non-boxers still.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be an interesting fight. My gut tells me that Woodley has more experience fighting in the gym with different strikers, and that's what we're leaning on. And I think there's going to be a pound. Now, I won't be shocked if Paul wins this time because I think they're strategic about picking these fights. But I'm going to lean towards Woodley. I don't even think it's just my heart. I really do believe that. And I'm not even hating on Paul as much as time goes on. Like, I'm not a fan of his, but there's certain things he does where, where he's trying to get fighters pay and stuff like that. And he trolls certain things where I'm like, all right, I kind of see that. And I kind of like that a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's really not for me still. But I'm going to lean towards Woodley on this one.
Yeah, I think Woodley should win this fight with his, experience and he's been in there under the lights with world champions multiple times. We say he hasn't, he lost his last 20 rounds or whatever against the cream of the crop, Yeah. That being said, his boxing is not really what was winning in world championships. Maybe earlier on, but he kind of looked like he got a little bit complacent, only looked to counter and land one big right hand. So I'm hoping that, he gets works a little bit more on his footwork and is the aggressor against Jake. I want to know if Jake can feel Woodley's power because he's got a lot of power. So,
right.
This is a good test for Jake. Big step up in competition, a good progression in his career. I'm kind of with you on not a giant fan of Jake Paul, like outside of the ring or whatever.
Right.
I am interested in his progression, and I feel like he's going about it the right way. He almost has an air of what Connor had, that kind of it factor on the way up, where he's exciting.
It's controversial. Let's get people talking. Yeah.
I think if he wins this fight, I might be on the Jake Paul train, depending on who he fights.
We'll see how it looks too. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah.
I know he was calling out Jorge, which I thought was weird because they trained together, but it's a good next step up for him.
If he can beat Woodley convincingly, that is a good next step. And it's a much better name. And the guy's smart. Like, he's not fighting, legit, solid 100% boxers, and he's fighting.
He's only got 3 fights.
Yeah, so, right. Yeah. Understandable. And he's fighting guys. He's finding guys with name talent, right, and recognition. But he's making them. But they're not boxing name recognition. There's a name in the combat sports world, and he's making them come over to fight in boxing, and they're doing it for the paycheck. Yeah. So it's smart. Now there is a UFC card this week. Nothing really caught my eye, but the main event is Barboza, and I'm going to butcher this name, Gigi Chikadze, I want to say is his name.
I think it's Chikadze. Dude, I can't remember it now.
Yeah,
but I know who he is. He's a great high-level kickboxer that keeps head kicking people to sleep.
Yeah, I'm looking at his record now. He's 13-2. His last loss was early in his career. He was only 5-2 at that point. And he just had a TKO victory over Cub Swanson. So he is actually 1, 2, 3. I've been sleeping on this guy. He's 6-0 in the UFC right now.
He's been fighting on prelim cards. This is his chance to get off those prelims and on main events, Yeah,
and Barboza, I mean, he's been at featherweight for a minute now here. What is this for his featherweight? His second featherweight? Yeah, 2-0 at featherweight right now. And he's coming off that KO win over Burgos, who was no joke at featherweight. So this probably, even though I hadn't paid attention, this main event definitely has potential for fireworks. With that gentleman you just mentioned, kickboxing resume. I'm not going to butcher his name again. And Barboza's love for spinny shit, as they say.
As Felder would say, yeah.
So, man, I'll have to default to you. What do you think wins this?
I think Barboza's going to lose this fight.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a very tactical fight. It might be a lot of feints, might be a little bit boring. With short bursts of very exciting things.
Yeah.
If it goes to the ground, Barboza probably has the edge, but I don't think it will. So I think it'll be a 5-round decision. for GG.
We'll talk about next week's fight card too. A little more emphasis on that one. I will save that. But Derek Brunson versus Darren Till is coming up, and I'm excited for that fight because I feel like this is a great fight for Till because Brunson's dangerous, and Brunson, he's got wrestling and he's got hands, but he's never quite made it to that next level. And Till has flirted with that next level. So it'll be interesting to see. We're both Till fans. I think if Till gets by this one, hopefully looking for some interesting stuff. We got a little ways before the next pay-per-view, right? UFC 266, September 25th. Man, I feel like there was quite a bit of distance in here from the last
big gap, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to miss that.
Also, starting tomorrow, well, it'll be on the 27th. So there's a PFL event too. So a guy I'm really high on, he was on the Contender Series, but didn't, quote unquote, go for the finish. Brennan Loughnane. Yeah. He's fighting a 17-1 Kaybulev, a wrestler, sounds like a wrestler name, but
yeah, it does.
This is the PFL playoffs for featherweight, so I'll be tuning into that one on ESPN Plus.
Yeah, Kayla Harrison just came off an impressive victory, and people are talking about her now. Like, she's getting a little buzz about. She's talking about that nobody can stop her takedown. Like, I don't care who you are, man or woman. Like, you're not stopping my takedowns. And
she said Stylebender couldn't stop her takedowns.
Stylebender, that's what. Yeah, and she had a great line too, where she said, "Everybody's talking about the puzzle. There's no puzzle. I'm going to take you down. I'm going to beat you up. That's it. Yeah. Spoiler." And I was like, "It's pretty good." Now the issue with her though is now she's so big, right? That she's fighting at lightweight, which there's no lightweight. There's barely a featherweight women's division in the UFC.
Right, they randomly bring a person in, or a bantamweight goes up to fight Amanda Nunes and lose.
I think I'd like to see, in a perfect world, maybe she wins $1 million in PFL, whatever, and that's her contract, and maybe she can get a fight with Chris Cyborg, and they can meet at a catchweight or something in Bellator. And if she wins, then man, maybe we get that Amanda Nunes fight someday too. Who knows? But
they're training partners, so I know at Kayla's last event, her last win, Nina and and Nunes were both there. So I don't know if we'll ever get that fight. I mean, she does seem like someone who's chasing a legacy. So inevitably, if you're going for legacy, you're gonna have to fight. Yeah, you're gonna have to fight Nunes. So I know people have fought their training partners before, but it's hard to tell how close people are or whatever. So
yeah, well, I definitely think that Cyborg fight might be within reach. Then I think Bellator would definitely be down to do that.
Oh, for sure. And I think Kayla's contract is up after this PFL tournament after this season. So
Bellator, get on that. You got to get on that. All right. I feel like you have the more attractive fight there potentially too, because I feel like they'll build that one up, right? Because UFC is the big organization. We're not really trying to deny that, but I feel like Bellator is almost perfect for a fight like that. They're really good at Scott Coker knows how to promote a fight like that. So
the UFC won't talk about all her exploits in PFL because they don't want to give any shine to PFL. So
but I think it'd be interesting. Yeah, I just saw we were talking about this before. I think maybe off air, but Gable Stevenson too has been in the news around, and it's funny because he's been flirting with the WWE. I guess he blew off Dana White, but he is interested in the UFC, and he was at a Bellator event.
He's also been offered football contracts, I think, too. So
it's freaking insane. I agree with Cormier, but I'm going to take a different route. I think he should try to do a Bellator contract and maybe do something with AEW wrestling because I think they would allow them to do both. And I think with AEW, he could just have his name in the spotlight, make some money pro wrestling, but they'll allow him to work with Bellator. And I think Bellator will give him the proper fights. Whereas I think if he goes to UFC, I think it's going to be all about beating this guy, and he's a wrestler. And will he be exciting necessarily? Maybe not. So I don't think Gable should jump into UFC right away, but man, wherever he lands, I'm going to be interested in.
I think for him and his career path, the UFC is the worst route for him to take.
Yeah.
Same reason you said, they're going to throw him to the wolves and hope he can swim. I think he should, if he has legit offers from the NFL, that's where you're going to make your money. Go there and play football for 3 years and be a multimillionaire.
That's a good point.
But, you know,
he has a football background?
No, I don't think so.
The fuck? Why?
Wrestlers have great footwork.
I get
they're
it.
Strong and they're grinders. So
this is NFL though.
yeah. So I mean, if they're gonna give him a tryout or whatever, but
man,
I think you're right though. If he did decide he wanted to do MMA, Bellator is the right route, and he could do AEW, which would only increase his brand. So
right, because WWE, I mean, like people who don't follow pro wrestling is obviously. I think everybody watches this podcast probably follows pro wrestling, but they're going to similar to UFC. They're going to want to monopolize his time a little bit. And I think with AEW, they have Hager already who fights for Bellator. So I think they would be more free, and they work with other companies as it is. So I think they would probably be able to do something with Bellator, and Gable will be able to split his time, make some money that way, and then maybe land in WWE or UFC. To me, God damn, like I said, I like the Bellator AEW, and if he's getting headway in Bellator, maybe go on to UFC and finish his career in WWE after everything's done. If he builds enough shine, obviously you're going to take some certain amount of risks, but to me, this sounds like a kid who's not afraid to take risk. Which, hey, maybe it does get him in the NFL. I'm so mind blown by that. Like just the idea that because you're an awesome wrestler. I don't get me wrong, I get it, but like combat sports, I get. You just take people down, you smother them, you beat them up. But like, it's not. You can't just beat up.
It's happened before that top level collegiate wrestlers just get offered NFL contracts. Usually, like linemen for their amazing footwork and toughness.
I think Brock was close to. He was on a walk-in, and he was on a practice.
Vikings. I've seen him in a Vikings jersey before.
And that was basically a situation too where he hadn't been like active in combat sports either in years, and he decided to go for it after years in pro wrestling. So, and even him with his athletic ability and the wrestling background, did very well for himself, all things considered. He was even on I think one of the Madden games too, actually, which is kind of funny. Brock Lesnar might be the only guy in history who's on a Madden, UFC, and WWE video games.
Yeah.
So, fun stat. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this week. For me and Chevy, we're out.
See ya.